Hello, I'm Andrew Pritchard, and thank you for watching today's Corn Belt Regional Forecast, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, as we check in with the jet stream here on this Friday morning, we can watch a trough over parts of the Great Lakes right now, and that has brought a round of storms to parts of the upper Midwest over the last couple of days, bringing a front through the Northeast region. As we head through the next couple of days, though, taking it all the way to Monday morning, we're going to watch this ridge kind of broaden out across parts of the western two-thirds of the country. That's going to allow some heat to continue to build across the western U.S., but let that kind of expand eastward into parts of the Corn Belt, at least bringing us back to normal for a couple days. Maybe a warmer than average day or two to be found even in the eastern Corn Belt before another shot of cooler air comes in as we get into the 7 to 10 day time frame. Looking at the next 10 days in terms of a temperature anomaly here again, as we look at the period here from August 30th through September 3rd. The heat kind of locked in across the western two-thirds, but letting some of that spill into parts of the Corn Belt as we get into the early to mid part of next week, before again a reinforcing shot of some cooler air comes in between September 4th and 8th, overspreading a big chunk of the Corn Belt region. The precipitation forecast, we'll talk about this more in depth, and we'll focus on the week one time frame during this forecast video, but we'll watch for a corridor to set up here across parts of the U.S. and the Canada border here, the Northern Plains, the Dakotas into Minnesota, and then we'll watch for a frontal boundary stalled across this region over the next 2 to 3 days, bringing at least isolated to scattered precipitation chances to parts of the Central Plains, into the mid-Mississippi Valley and the eastern Corn Belt as we head through the weekend into early next week. Now, the last 24 hours of precipitation, we've watched a corridor of heavy rain across parts of Kansas and Missouri in the form of a big MCS, again, some scattered showers and storms across parts of the Great Lakes, even a couple severe storms in parts of Wisconsin and Michigan during the day yesterday. That would be on Thursday. As we wake up, though, on Friday morning, there's a bit of a glitch in my satellite picture. I apologize for that. But if you can bear with me for just a second, here is the very cold cloud tops from that cluster of storms across the Central Plains here on Friday morning. We'll go ahead and we'll look underneath those cloud tops here. And again, here is that cluster of storms, that MCS. There's a squall line on the leading edge, perhaps producing some strong wind gusts, maybe a shelf cloud on the leading edge there if you're in southern Missouri or Oklahoma or Arkansas this morning. And then again, what brought some showers and storms to Wisconsin and Michigan yesterday, moving off to the east early this morning. Taking a zoomed in look at the MCS across Kansas and Missouri this morning, I just want to point out here you see this counterclockwise flow within there. This is what we call an MCV, a mesoscale convective vortex. These clusters of storms can often grow upscale and generate their own central area of low pressure. And the reason I mention that, I've talked about them before, but even as these showers and storms die out here as we head into the later morning hours and the early afternoon, perhaps on Friday, that area of low pressure can continue on, moving off to the east, and that is where I expect showers and storms to light back up as we head into Friday evening and perhaps Friday night, likely across parts of the Ohio River Valley here, perhaps the southern half of Illinois, parts of southeastern Missouri, Kentucky, maybe even southern Indiana, seeing some showers and storms as we head into, again, late in the day today, likely into Friday night. Again, just kind of cool, and those are the clues that we have to look for as we talk about, summer and late summer precipitation. Often we're looking for some of these clues from the day before, and we have to kind of use models with low confidence and again, draw the clues from what we're seeing when we wake up on Friday morning. Looking at the frontal picture here then on Friday morning, well, here's the frontal boundary stalled across the region. And as we head through the next couple of days, the picture doesn't change much. This is the same boundary stalled out across the region on Sunday. And again, that's what keeps at least widely isolated showers and storms in the forecast from the Central Plains to the eastern Corn Belt heading through the weekend. So you look at the severe weather forecast then, here is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in the bottom right here, just watching for a low risk of maybe a strong storm or two in some of these areas, parts of the high plains into the central and southern plains, maybe a strong storm or two here across parts of southern Illinois and Indiana. And that, of course, from that little MCV that I just pointed out as it moves eastward across parts of the Ohio River Valley. Low severe weather risk Saturday and Sunday, but you can see the frontal boundary stalled across the region, keeping at least isolated thunderstorms in the forecast. The high resolution rapid refresh will take this into Saturday morning, bringing it back here. Here's the cluster of storms ongoing early Friday morning as we head through the mid-morning hours, watching this kind of die out before, again, that MCV, it continues on. This model tries to do a good job of holding on to that, watching for showers and storms to perhaps flare back up across this region as we get into Friday afternoon, Friday evening, and Friday night. Also, a couple storms possible across parts of the Dakotas as we get into Saturday, really popping up here late Friday into Friday night, and then continuing on during the morning hours on Saturday. And then, of course, watching for the potential that some of these storms could ramp back up along that frontal boundary as we get into Saturday morning across the Central Plains, parts of Kansas and Missouri. As long as this frontal boundary is kind of stalled in this region, we'll have to watch this area for at least isolated precipitation. The high-resolution NAM model will show the same thing, but take it a bit further into the day on Sunday. We'll step through time with this one again, bringing it back to Friday morning. Here's our cluster of storms, our MCS, across parts of the Central Plains. We see this model try to do the same thing, keep that area of low pressure going as it heads into the mid-Mississippi Valley here, parts of the Ohio River Valley, watching for storms to kind of flare back up, maybe around the St. Louis area here, parts of eastern Missouri into western Illinois, late in the day on Friday, carrying on off to the east. Really, you can't take this as gospel. I want you to understand that. We don't take this forecast as gospel. We use it as guidance only. And of course, I would watch this entire region here, parts of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky, for the potential for showers and storms late Friday into Saturday, whether this model wants to continue them or not. Now, the high-resolution NAM model also breaking out a cluster of storms across, again, the Dakotas here as we get into Friday night and Saturday morning, and then also hinting at the potential for a flare-up across parts of Kansas and Oklahoma. So good agreement in the overall placement for the next 24 to 36 hours here, really watching parts of the Dakotas, parts of Kansas and Oklahoma, and then wherever this MCV tracks, parts of Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana, perhaps towards the Ohio River Valley, watching for some showers and storms Friday night into Saturday as well. The total accumulated precipitation from the high-resolution NAM model, it's going to outline it pretty well as well. Again, the corridor of heaviest precipitation is where that MCS is ongoing right now. Kansas, Missouri, parts of Oklahoma, and Arkansas as we head off to the south. Watching for isolated storms to flare up across parts of the Dakotas late Friday into early Saturday. And then with the frontal boundary stalled across this region, have to watch for at least isolated showers and storms across parts of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio as well. Now, as we take this out a bit further, this is an index that I've been working on developing here, going back to the spring into the summer. It's a thunderstorm environment index, and it's not necessarily a thunderstorm probability index. You can't look at the higher end of the scale and say that storms are more likely, but it kind of helps us identify environments where the thunderstorm chances are going to be higher, where the environment's perhaps more volatile, supportive of stronger storms, maybe severe weather. Now, as we take it through the next couple of days, just quickly, I want to point out, you see each and every day, we've got this frontal boundary kind of stalled across this region. That's why we do keep the chance for scattered showers and storms in the forecast across, again, the Central Plains into the Eastern Corn Belt through the weekend. But as we head into early next week, we're going to watch for another storm system to approach from the west, and that's going to bring a more significant chance of some thunderstorms to the northern plains and the upper Midwest, perhaps part of the Central Plains and the Eastern Corn Belt. We'll have to see how far south this thunderstorm risk ends up settling. But really watching for perhaps some severe weather across the Dakotas on Monday. And then as we head into the afternoon on Tuesday, this is when that front would sweep through the Eastern Corn Belt. So maybe watching for the risk of some strong storms across parts of the Midwest and the Great Lakes during the day Tuesday. So our next significant storm system comes sweeping through Monday and Tuesday of next week. So isolated rain chances for the weekend, maybe a more significant thunderstorm chance across the Dakotas Monday, and then the upper Midwest parts of the Eastern Corn Belt on Tuesday. Where are we headed beyond this? We'll look at the GFS, the 500 millibar height anomalies. Again, here is the trough that's brought in some cooler weather as we began the week and it got into the middle part of the week. And as we head into the middle part of the week next week, the early to middle part of next week, again, here is where the ridge begins to broaden out, allowing some of that heat to return to at least the western two-thirds of the country. But it's short-lived, at least for now. We watch a trough build back into the region as we get into next weekend, late next week, into next weekend, and that brings northwesterly flow back into at least the central and eastern Corn Belt, and that's going to bring some cooler air back into the region again late next week. The precipitation forecast is a bit messy, but it will kind of outline things pretty well, to be honest. We get the frontal boundary stalled across this region here for the next couple of days, watching for at least isolated shower and thunderstorm activity across the Central Plains into the Eastern Corn Belt. And then as we get into next week, here is where the area of low pressure develops here as we get into Monday of next week, watching for, again, remember the chance for maybe some strong storms across this region Monday. And then as we get into the day on Tuesday, that frontal boundary sweeps through the Great Lakes into the Eastern Corn Belt, perhaps a risk of some strong storms across this region during the day on Tuesday, and of course their next dose of precipitation perhaps during that time frame as well. Now, as we get into the end of next week, it wants to kind of stall the frontal boundary in this region, build high pressure across parts of the Great Lakes, and that I would expect would quiet us down across this region, bring in cooler temperatures and a break from the precipitation here. This looks like maybe Wednesday and Thursday of next week, perhaps lingering into the later part of the weekend. But of course, we have a big wild card by the time we get to the end of next week, and that of course is Dorian. Not going to impact the Corn Belt unless we see some kind of drastic change, but certainly a wild card with the overall flow across the eastern third of the United States, and going to be introducing some uncertainty beyond that. Looking day by day at the 24-hour accumulated precipitation, this again going to kind of point out pretty well. Here's the day on Friday, again, kind of watching this corridor along the frontal boundary for some shower and storm activity. As we head into the day on Saturday, again, kind of focusing on this area for scattered showers and storms, watching for isolated storms across the Dakotas. Getting into the day on Sunday, same thing, still have that frontal boundary, still keeping the chance for scattered showers and storms across the Central Plains into the eastern Corn Belt. And then our next storm system comes sweeping in here on Monday. That's where, again, we see a more significant thunderstorm risk across the Dakotas and the upper Midwest on Monday. And then getting into Tuesday, here's that frontal boundary sweeps across the region, bringing rain to an end across the Corn Belt for at least a couple days here as we get into Wednesday and Thursday, until we await our next storm system to really come in and shake things up. So it looks like isolated showers and storms in the forecast here through the weekend across this region. Monday, we bring the significant thunderstorm risk into the north, and then Tuesday, we sweep it across this region. If I can kind of break the week down for you, then we quiet down beyond Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of next week. Here's your total accumulated precipitation from the GFS, of course, heaviest across the Central Plains, but with that frontal boundary at least keeping scattered opportunities for some to get a good drink here as we head through the next 3 to 4 days across that corridor. The heavy precipitation comes into this region more likely as we get into the Monday time frame, but of course maybe watching for some showers and storms that the GFS is not really picking up here Friday night, Saturday morning, and then again maybe another round of those on Sunday. The GFS ensemble, kind of a similar look, but smooths it out a bit. Again, the more significant precipitation across the Central Plains, isolated showers and storms each day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and perhaps Monday, along that stalled out frontal boundary in that corridor from the Central Plains to the Eastern Corn Belt. More significant risk up here going to be on Monday. That's when we could be talking about some severe weather before the frontal boundary sweeps across this region on Tuesday. And then we quiet it down Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The NBM, our national blended model, a very similar picture. You see the heaviest precipitation kind of in that corridor. This is going to be where we have the frontal boundary stalled out for the next few days. This is going to be our Monday thunderstorm risk, and then of course the frontal boundary sweeps through this region during the day on Tuesday. And then here is Dorian, where we'll be talking about, of course, watch Eric's video on Monday. He'll have some updates on what's going on with Dorian in a more broad look at all of North America. Your temperature forecast, then, this will kind of wrap things up for us. I'll just show you kind of how things progress through the weekend. Again, starting off on the cool side here early this week, but as we get into the early part of next week, watching for that ridge to kind of build out in advance of the next approaching storm system, allowing some warmth to sneak back into a big chunk of the Corn Belt here for the day on Monday and Tuesday. But then, of course, here comes the next storm system through the region. We can see the warm air advection we see in advance of this area of low pressure, the cold air advection that comes in on the backside, bringing in the cooler temps, and you can almost draw in your area of low pressure then right there with your front sweeping through the region, cooling us off as we head into the mid to late part of next week. Looking at the high temperature forecast then, just to finish it out, we are awfully cool for this time of year across the region here. High temperatures in the 60s and lower 70s across a huge chunk of the Corn Belt for the day on Friday. As we get into the day on Saturday, that cooler air kind of slowly migrating off to the east, allowing the warmth to rebuild into this region in advance of the next storm system. Warmer still as we get into the day on Monday. This, of course, warm air advection in advance of that next storm system, setting the stage for some strong storms across this region for the day on Monday. Tuesday, that storm system progressing off to the east, that front sweeping across the region, cooler to the north, warmer off to the south for your day on Tuesday. As always, Eric Snodgrass will have an in-depth look at the evolution of the next 1 to 2 weeks in our Monday morning ag forecast video. And then I will have your next check-in with the Corn Belt region on Tuesday morning. Have a great day. Have a wonderful weekend.